Praise the Lord, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Put in the chat, say hello to us. Praise the Lord, and we're glad that you have all joined us once again for another Wednesday Bible study and time of sharing, time of empowering, time of networking, and time of fellowship. Amen. We thank the Lord for the prayers that have already gone forth by Sister Rachel and First Lady. We appreciate those prayers, and we're going to ride on those prayers this evening and go ahead and begin to get started. So just a little bit about what's going to happen this evening. As you can see, I have Sister Sarah Jackson and Sister LaTonja Brown. We also have Sister Deidre Daymon, and we are, oh, hey, Sister Patrice. She's saying hi to us, everybody. So we are going to be moving forward in our studies and discussions on a winning mindset. And part of what we're going to do tonight is have some discussion, but also some sharing time. Sister LaTonja, Sister Sarah, and Sister Deidre are going to be coming kind of in their own personal way, but we are just going to throw out some gems and some nuggets in regards to their journey. As you know, we talked back in the beginning about, we know we are winners. God has given us the ability to overcome, right? And we are more than conquerors, but what we also know is it's that time in between. And sometimes there's some setbacks, sometimes there's some failures, but it's about that mindset, right? Like continuing to carry the mindset that we will win. And so we're going to allow some time for Sister LaTonja and Sister Sarah to share some things about their journey in specific areas. So Sister LaTonja is going to come, and she's going to be discussing a little bit about her journey through personal finances and how she was able to maintain her mindset and being successful in that area. And I think this is going to be a really good discussion. So feel free, as we're moving forward, to put questions in the chat box, and as well as if you want to send them directly to Pentecostal Covenant, you can do that, or you can just share to everyone in the chat box if you have questions or even comments, right? Because we want to also encourage these young ladies because, our journey's never over. We still have to continue to move forward. But what we want to do is begin to incorporate some things and hopefully share like some tips and some gems that we can hopefully pick up on and begin to move forward. Sister Sarah is going to be sharing some of hers too, and we just we heard a little bit. Those that were here for Sister Rachel's testimony in time of sharing in Africa, and she gave some little tidbits about her sister, which is Sister Sarah sitting here. So she's going to also discuss a little bit about her mindset and how she had to push through, and she can come in her own way. She has several areas she could speak from, but in terms of what it took for her mentally to thrive and to pursue, she even has some recent journeys. So however she wants to share, she's welcome to. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with Sister LaTonja, and Sister Deidre is going to also come and be able to facilitate just a little bit of it with us. But so Sister LaTonja, go ahead and share a little bit about your journey and just a little bit of it. You gave us some a few months ago. So go ahead in your own way. Thank you.
Of course. So I was raised by my maternal aunt. She raised me and my two sisters, and she had 4 kids of her own. So at the peak, there were 7 children. My maternal uncle also lived with us off and on through my childhood, as did my aunt's on and off boyfriend. So that's 10 people in a 4-bedroom house. And so we were poor. So the whole, food stamps, medical coupons, government cheese, beans, applesauce, you name it, we had it. So as I was growing up, I kind of was mindful of a couple of things. So people talk about stretching a dollar. Well, my aunt could stretch a penny. So if there were coupons, we would be lined up with our food stamp or cash, whatever it was, toilet paper, sugar, it was on sale. We were going to stock up. So I kind of watched her kind of just stretch and kind of watch how she spent money. The other thing I noticed is growing up in elementary school. So my best friend Jody Sternad, she would have that big 64 Crayola crayon set with the sharpener in the back, and I would have the 8-pack generic from the store, and I would be so upset and bitter about it. Like, I want the big one. And then, kind of getting spending money, well, I never really had enough. And so I was kind of always mindful that we don't have as much as my friends. And I was going to their houses for summer parties, and they had just so much more than we had. And then I would watch my aunt, use Top Ramen, 10 for $1 to make macaroni and cheese. So I'm like, something's not right here. So kind of watching this growing up and kind of watching her habits and her spending habits. So when I got my first job, my aunt said to me, okay, you have a job, you're going to pay this bill, and you're also going to buy groceries for the house, and whatever spending money you need is coming from your paycheck. And because I had watched her growing up using coupons and looking for sales, that's kind of how I approach money. How can I get the best deal? What's on sale? What are the coupons? And even when it was time to buy clothes, well, I don't need all of these new clothes. Because the other thing growing up was we got one new outfit for school at the beginning of the year, and I had a lot of hand-me-downs as the youngest daughter. But I realized, hey, wait a minute. I'm paying for this. So things that I thought were important when I was little were not as important because I was paying for it. So I kind of learned how to balance a little bit and make it stretch. So when I got to college, I had all of these kind of habits around finances. So I had financial aid, I had my work-study job, and I was able to manage that. So I was in the dorm for my first 2 years, and by the end of the third quarter, my friends had run out of money on their meal card, and I still had a lot of money on mine because I had budgeted that out to last me the entire year. Because I had learned early on, you have to budget, and you have to think ahead, and you have to manage the money, and kind of think about what could go wrong. And so I was always very careful. But the problem with college is when you're at the bookstore, there are people outside trying to give you credit cards. And you're young, and they're telling you, hey, use this credit card to get books, which I did. But I also used the credit card to get Red Robin and go to the Gap and go to the Express. So when I graduated from college, I had credit card debt. And that was my first mistake with money, is going into debt, buying things I didn't need. Because when I looked back on those statements, what is this? These are meals that you had once. These are clothes that you hardly ever wore. So that was kind of my first reality check with money. And I said, never again, Satan. So then I graduated from college. I had a little bit of student loan debt, which I paid off. And I was working. But I was working, living paycheck to paycheck. But again, I could kind of go back to those early lessons and make that money stretch for me. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute. I have money left over now because I was earning more. and then earning more, and then earning more. So I was like, oh my God, you have discretionary income all of a sudden that I could use for other stuff. So I discovered I like to travel. My first trip, I made my second mistake with money. No, actually, my second trip. My first trip I saved for. The second trip, I was using my credit card throughout, and I came back all happy, and then that statement came, and I was like, wait a minute. What did you just buy? So after that, like, listen, if you're gonna travel, you have to save for it. So now, if I don't save money to travel, I can't travel. But I learned I don't like having debt. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And so just kind of making mistakes and learning from them. So I think right now I'm in a very good place financially, but my issue is I have what I call a poverty mindset, where it doesn't matter how much money I have, I still feel like I don't have enough. So there's a kind of this balance between spending every dime you make and also hoarding money. So I'm trying to find that balance of saying, hey, choose what you can afford, invest some, save some, spend some, but you can't just let it just sit in the bank building up because it makes me feel comfortable and it makes me feel good about myself and it makes me feel secure. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get right now, is kind of balance it out. I would say that, my mom didn't raise us, but I feel like my mom had good business sense. So we were poor, but my mom and her siblings, they were like poor. And so I think my mom, when she got money, she was kind of I'm going to show you I have money. So she was the church lady with the hat, the purse, and the shoes, because she wanted to show it. So she often said, with all the money that's passed through my hands, I could have been a multimillionaire, because she was making money, but she was also spending it. On the other hand, she was actually smart, because my mom actually ended up having 3 homes. One home she gave to my sister, which I'm still bitter about. I'm like, where's my house? But then she also had a savings account. She had a 401. So I feel like in some ways I kind of learned from people who didn't have anyone telling them to do with money, but they figured it out as time went by. So that's kind of my money testimony in a nutshell.
Thank you, Sister LaTonja. I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How you mentioned finding a balance. How are you going about finding that balance for yourself? Like, what does that look like? What process are you going through to do that?
So basically, I feel like for me, it's not being cheap with myself. There are certain things that, for travel, that I will spend money on. But other things, I'm kind of like, I'll get the generic brand, and I don't have to. So I say, stop being cheap, and actually, if I like the Mrs. Meyer hand lotion, get it. You can afford to. So kind of figuring out what I can afford to do without breaking my bank and actually enjoying it. So I think for me, it's learning to enjoy it more and not feeling guilty about it, because I want to save it in case something happens, because I don't want to be poor again.
Got it. My other question for you is, what advice would you give our youth about money and saving money and being wise with money? And also, you mentioned once you started working, getting raises and getting more money. What advice would you get for those that have recently maybe got an increase or a bonus? What are just some tips, some words of wisdom that you might give in those 2 situations?
So I would say for the youth, it's separating what you want versus what you need. And I think some adults haven't done that well. So if you can figure out when you're younger, what do you want versus what you need, it'll help you spend your money more wisely. Don't spend every dime you make. You have to save some, invest some, as well as give to charity. I would also say create a budget. Whatever age you are, know how much money you have coming in and know how much money you have going out, because that way you can allocate funds for saving, for investing, for giving to charity. You have to know where the money is going to. I also think you have to figure out what is your comfort level. For example, I know what income I need out of experience to actually enjoy life. So anything in excess, how do you invest this? How do you pay your mortgage off? How do you give more? I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. He has the 7 baby steps to financial freedom. I'm on step 6. Look it up. It's saving, paying off debt. And also for the young people, credit cards are the devil. Do not get one. If you want something, learn to save for it. Credit cards are good if you want your reward points, but also pay it off because you don't want to pay interest. Going back from college, I don't know how much money I paid in interest, but that money could have been spent on other things.
Thank you, Sister LaTonja. One last question. Go a little bit more in detail before we pass it to Sister Sarah about your mindset. How did you make that shift? You mentioned growing up poor, but how did you make that shift to think, money is important. I have a little bit of money. I like to travel, so I'm going to spend. I like to shop, so that's where some of my money goes. And so I have some money that I can use to travel, and it's okay. Like, how did you, you know what I mean? How did you shift your mind frame to think that, and maybe you're still in the process of doing that, right? Shifting your mind frame to think that it's okay to spend money on something that you enjoy. Because you are working hard, we want to enjoy life before it's done. So how did that shift happen for you, or how is it happening currently?
So I would say it's happening currently because I didn't realize I had a poverty mindset until recently. But for me, it's saying, hey, you know what? When you die, someone is going to inherit this money and they're probably going to spend it in a matter of months, and you've saved all this money for them to spend. But I think it's kind of part of my self-care where I realize you have to take care of yourself. For example, with shoes, you can't go to Payless and get cheap shoes because you need to go invest in real shoes. So realizing part of it is an investment. So if you buy things, it's an investment. It's not just spending money. It's actually an investment in yourself, in your happiness, in your peace, in your joy. So I had to kind of change my mindset of what money is. I had to make money work for me and not me work for it.
I just have another question for you now. How did you recognize that you had that poor mindset? Like, what was there an epiphany? Was there an event that happened? Like you said, that was as of recently. What happened?
Before my mom passed away, her and I had a talk, and she was telling me about what she was leaving. And she looked at me and said, Mookie, this money right here from this insurance, I want you to actually enjoy that. I don't want you to spend it on a bill or anything practical. Actually enjoy it. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't do things spontaneous. Now, one time I was gonna buy myself a Louis Vuitton purse, but then I walked in the store, I saw the price, and I walked on out. Because in my mind, I'm always seeing money as, okay, so if I buy that purse, that's a trip to so-and-so. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can do both. It's just a matter of, do you want to?
Thank you so much for sharing that. Hopefully you all were taking notes over there in Zoom land.
So, P.S., I would say if you want help doing a budget, let me know I love doing budgets.
Amen.
And I have never encountered anyone who didn't have money that they could actually save if they chose to. It's making choices.
Absolutely. There's always a way, something you can cut out or reduce.
Yeah.
I appreciate that offer. That's beautiful. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Did you have someone, an advisor, a coach, a mentor that was supporting you along the way, that was giving you information, that was teaching you about finances and money?
So my first mentor at work, his name was John Pilcher. And he would talk to me about investment and saving money. And one day I told him, I'm thinking about buying a condo. And I should never have said that to him, because next thing I know, I'm whisking around looking at condos. So he encouraged me. And then my coworker, Christine Wolf, we would walk to and from the bus stop, and she's older than me, and she would also talk to me about money. I remember her telling me how much money she had saved. I was like, what, you have how much saved? Because it was just like crazy to me that someone would save that amount of money. So, you can too. So my goal became, hey, you know what? You're going to do that. And so kind of people's example at work, who are and older people, my friends Ann and Clara, they were always telling me, giving me money advice about investing, staying in the PERS program, and just saying you have to think about the future. I think people today think about today, and they don't think you're going to retire one day, and when you retire, you're going to need money to survive. So yeah, I've had plenty of people speak into my ear about money.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're going to shift gears just a tiny bit and pass it to Sister Sarah, so she can share her testimony and give us some tidbits that she may have. Go ahead, Sister Sarah.
Hi. A little nervous. So yeah, talking and focusing on mindsets. I have quite the history, so I'll try to really just structure it as far as my relationship with God and my mindset in relation to that. So, of course, you probably know, you've met my mom. You know, I grew up in the church constantly. Monday through Monday, I was there. Every day, even summer. So I spent a lot of time, I always knew who God was, in a sense. I always knew who Jesus was. I always knew the basics, the definitions, and all the theological information you could imagine, because I spent so much time in church. There was no way I wasn't gonna understand the basics. But then as I got older, you know, as I grew from, you know, young Sarah that was, you know, very free from some of the different things we face as an adult or as a young adult, a teenager. And I think I was maybe 10, 11, maybe 12, 10 to 12 years old when I was first diagnosed with depression. And from there, it turned severe. And from severe depression, if you knew me in the stage, you knew I was very anxious. I was very afraid of so many things. And I was also diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder. So having those, I don't know, you know, we talk a lot these days about mental health and the struggles, like it's very trendy right now to discuss the definitions and different things. But yeah, so having both of those things at the same time, it's not the most, not the most fun, especially where I was and just the different things that I was facing and the age that I was, you know, I think it's more so than just, you know, the enemy's plots against me, although that was very much involved. There also probably was chemical imbalances. There also were different circumstances that added to it. But all of it kind of worked together to take a sense of who I was away from me and who I was even in God's eyes and who God even was in my own mind. I started out thinking that God was, a loving father, which he is. And somewhere along the line, when I look back, all this fear and anxiety about hell, about God being this taskmaster, that's just constantly driving the whip. Some of the many fears you see with people that have been in church a long time or have gone to different churches and et cetera, and have heard all kinds of different preaching. Some preachers that use fear tactics, some that don't. So there was just so many tidbits of that just developed to the point that my relationship with God was very strained. And I started to grow farther and farther away. I stopped wanting to go to church. God bless my mom, used to fight her tooth and nail because, of course, she was very much like, I don't care if you're sick, you're going to church. You're going. You're going to be there. You can lay down in the back pew, but you're going, which I'm very grateful for that now. Thanks, Mom. But I became very just strained, and I felt lost. I started going through things in high school. I became chronically ill with migraines, severe migraines that caused me to be a year behind in school. Then I had to catch up. Then my school administration was filled with a lot of honestly racist people that had different systems where they just did not want minority children or children that didn't speak English, just different people, that are marginalized generally. And I happened to be a part of that group. So I got swept up under that and this constant battle with the mental illnesses that I was struggling with and trying to graduate. And then before you know it, boom, I'm an adult. So one moment I'm in high school, I'm just fighting to get through and to survive it. And, along that way, again, I just lost sight. I completely lost sight of God. After high school, I took a gap year from school. Well, it was supposed to be a gap year, turned into 3, but it's okay. I took a gap year, and during that time, I started trying to live alone. That didn't last long because, again, adulthood is the worst hood, as they say. It was not fun, and when I turned 18, I don't know what happened, but the rent that I thought it was gonna be went up. The wages went down. I was just like, wait a minute. And so my depression, which was already severe, my anxiety, which was already severe, it almost seemed to worsen. I started battling so many suicidal thoughts. Through that period, I had 2 failed suicide attempts just because of how, it's amazing looking back, but just how hopeless everything seemed to be, how harsh the world, and the world is harsh, but how harsh it seemed from that perspective of someone that's been struggling, suffering, and et cetera. And so I got even farther and farther and farther away from God, and it got to the point where I started dabbling in New Age, as some of you guys might see, the crystals, the sage, all the things that, in my opinion, are truly counterfeit. They can imitate what's authentic, but they're not authentic. And I started dibbling and dabbling into that because I wanted a sense, I think I was searching for a sense of God, or a sense of who God was and who God is. But I was going through all the wrong ways. I was going through the ways of, just the friends that I had at the time. And then I moved to Botswana very randomly. And, I had all these plans. You know what they say about your plans versus, what God has planned. I had all these plans to go to school. I was going to change my life. I was going to get it together. And then the car accident happened. If you listened to my sister's testimony, I'm sure you're familiar with the details, but in short, I had really severe injuries, and the hospital that we were in wasn't the best hospital. I'm thankful that, I came out of it okay, all in all, but the treatment there was not the best. And I was in a position, I got to the point where I couldn't move. I was in a hospital bed. I was in so much pain. I don't know what was going on, but at one point they wouldn't give me any, they were afraid that I was going to become addicted to painkillers. So they gave me like the very bare minimum, even after coming out of surgery, even after. So for so long, I was really just confined to bed in a large ward in a whole nother country. And there was no Wi-Fi. I don't know why that was what I was most upset about. Because I was just like, I can't even text. I can't get on Facebook. That, again, shows my age. But it was just, I felt, my mom was still back in the country, which was one of the hardest parts because, you want your mom at those times. And it got to the point where I was just so isolated. I was so broken. You get to a point where you can't move and you start really thinking about all the stuff that you've been trying to run from, all the stuff you've been trying to avoid. So all of that started to come out. I mean, I was in the hospital for almost a month, and I think I went through my whole life while there and ruminating over every detail. But somehow, that was where God reached me again. That was where I started to hear his voice for the first time in I don't know how long, maybe since I was very, very young. That was when I realized how much I missed him, how much I missed his presence, how far I had gotten from even going to school and going there. I didn't go there because, God told me. I went there because it was my own desire. I was completely free agenting, like just being a free agent, no direction. And I just really realized how much I was idolizing, how much just had gone completely wrong, and how far I had strayed from the example that Jesus had set, the example that I had learned all those times as a child in church, all the things that I knew better. But I had fallen into that, like a lot of us, we all do in all ways. But I realized I started to dream again somehow in that phase, even though I was depressed, out of my mind in pain. Somehow things started to get easier for me to dream, for me to imagine something different. I went from, even though I was going to school and et cetera, I went from having a kind of negative image of myself and my future to wondering what it would look like if I was submitted to God, if I was actually going in accordance to his will for my life, if I was actually doing things how he set out for me. And it wasn't funny, but it was crazy how, when I came out of the surgery, they told me that I was going to be able to walk in like 3 days. And I looked at them and I was just like, you've lost your mind. There's no way. I don't know how anybody, I'm thinking this is going to take months. Like, how you want me to walk from where to where? With no. And I remember the first time I took my first step, and I think the only thing that got me out of that bed was because I could hear, one, I had my sister who was always been my cheerleader. She was always there. And then two, most foremostly, I heard God's voice again. And I could hear him saying, try. And it started with taking one step. And then it turned into 10. And then it turned into 20. And the next thing you know, they were saying I was free to go. I was free to leave. And then even after I left, it was maybe 18 months of rehabilitation as far as getting on crutches, getting off of crutches, getting out of being bedridden, which humbled me in such a way. I mean, there's nothing that will humble you more than having somebody have to, sponge baby who as a grown adult. I was like, wait a minute, this, I have no other option. But it's that type of situation that completely humbled me. It reset me. It wasn't like a complete break where I was destroyed, but it was a break where I was reset. And I started going to church again. I started desiring a relationship with God more than anything. And even that, I had so many hiccups, so many different spiritual traumas, which, we don't talk about enough as far as, just the different things that you can experience under the wrong leaders, the wrong churches that have their own set of agendas, their own set of rules that kind of like me when I first started. I thought I was still Christian when I was still in crystals and sage and doing all the things that really weren't Christian. But just as an example of, there are so many Christians, there's so many leaders, there's so many churches, there's so many places of worship, but it is very rare to find a truly safe place, a place that is set apart, a place where the leaders are truly shepherds, a place where they have the best interest for you because they're following someone who has the best interest for you. And so, although I had a lot of rough experiences with that while in Botswana, I also started to sing again. I also started to worship again. I also started to pray over people. I also started to study every day. I also dedicated 10 months just solely to seek God in their leadership programs. We went on different local missions trips. I was really walking in the gifts of the Spirit again. I started speaking in tongues, and for a long time I had this fear that I can't speak in tongues. What do you mean? I can't. That doesn't even feel right. Like, it was such a mindset that I couldn't do these things, but slowly but surely, because of the fact that, even with the church that I was at or the people that I was around that may have had different agendas, my agenda, my mindset was, I want to get back to God. I want to get back to that place when I was 5 years old, and there was nothing safer, nothing better than being in the sanctuary at the altar. There was nothing better than feeling his presence and feeling his words and feeling like I was in step with him. I was in alignment with him. I was holding his hand, and I had confidence that he was beside me. I wanted to get to that place. So that spurred me on, and, even coming back, I had quite the rough landing. I suffered a lot just in regards to the different things that happened. I could spend a whole hour talking about that, but I came back, got back into therapy, started coming back to church again. It took me a while. But even when I got back, it went from, having depression and anxiety to having depression, anxiety, and being diagnosed with complex PTSD. So last year, that threw me for a loop, because at the point, you get used to being depressed. It's really easy to. You get used to being anxious, and you start to believe that those things are a part of your identity. You start to believe that mindset is permanent, especially when you're in it for so long. And having that new challenge of additional weight, my therapist was saying that she did not understand how I was still sane. She didn't understand how, with the different things that I had struggled with, the different things that I had gone through, how are you not buckling under this weight? And it got to a point where it wasn't just her saying that, it was so many different people. And I started to get really irritated, because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I'm still here. I don't know how I'm still sane. I'm tired. I'm this, I'm that. But over the course of the last year, it was like, even though that I had the mindset of doubt, I had the mindset of fear, I had the mindset of anxiety, I had the mindset of depression, I had all these dark things that were also battling with all the things I had heard God say about me. I could believe that I was hopeless or a failure, or I could believe that God had said that I'm a warrior, that I'm a minister, that I'm a worshiper, that I'm a daughter, and all the different things that he had spoken to me and given me visions and dreams about. But it kind of came to a point last year where I had to choose my mindset. I had to dig into faith, and anybody that's dug into faith knows that it is the most uncomfortable, most unsteady feeling that you can ever have, because you don't know. You can't be certain. I think a lot of the times in Christianity we love certainty, and then we call certainty faith, when faith honestly often comes from not being sure and still acting anyway, and still acting into accordance on what God has said to you. So slowly but surely over the last year and up till now, some of the things that God has planted in me, from when I was a child to when I was in Botswana to just all throughout my life, they ended up being proven, cemented. They ended up being confirmed. They ended up being stronger. Even though they were tested, it showed just how much God had actually done in me. It showed just how much, even though, these weapons were set against me, they did not prosper. They did not prosper against my mind or my body or my future. And so now I'm able to look back and really smile and thank God, even about the hospitals, even about the pain, even about the spiritual trauma, because it's brought me to where I am, it's brought me to who I am, and it's brought me to this confidence of who God is. And even though I don't have everything figured out, quite the messy 24-year-old still, but there's a faith that I had worried that I had lost. There's that shield I thought it was broken, but it wasn't. It couldn't be, because Christ is the perfecter. He is the creator of our faith. So I guess all in all, that just brings it to, what I believe is the winning mindset, is being rooted in faith deeply, truly, even if it's been tested, and being able to choose what God says over what you feel. So that's it.
Thank you, Sister Sarah. I want to start off by saying I appreciate you sharing. Mental health is a sensitive topic, and so I appreciate you being open and authentic to share with us some barriers that you've had. So I want to say that first. Second, I want to say you don't look like what you've been through, honey. So that's a blessing, thank God. Just in wrapping up here, just have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, I grew up in the church too. Did you have to watch those Rapture movies on Friday nights?
My mom didn't force me to, but I feel like I used to. What was that movie called? That everybody
Take It or something?
Yep. Scarred me for life. I was so scared.
Me too. Me too.
But yes, definitely watch those ones.
How do you mentioned therapy, but what other ways are you currently dealing with depression, anxiety when they pop up in your life?
Yeah, so definitely a big believer in Jesus and therapy. Like that has to be especially in times like this. Some of the other different practices that I do, other than of course, praying constantly. I try really hard to work on my prayer life, not to make it so much as a rigid time in a day, but to make sure that it's fluid and feels like a relationship, so that I'm praying consistently throughout the day. One of the things that has helped is I created a prayer box. It's kind of ugly because I ran out of wrapping paper and I was trying to make it cute, but long story short, I just take a box, I put a slot in it, and I started writing down my prayers. I started writing down my anxieties. I started writing down my fears, my wants, my desires, and then placing it into that box after praying over the box, which was probably extra, but yeah. And so that way that I'm not just, sending up prayers in my mind and I'm really casting my anxieties at his feet. It helps me to release those things and release the fears and the things that I'm holding in.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or comments that we have in the chat or here in the audience? Sister Danny?
So, Sister Sarah, again, I agree. Thank you so much for sharing. Just a comment about your, when you started discussing serving. So you were using serving as a way of kind of propelling yourself forward as well. How can you speak a little bit about what that actually did for you? Like, I guess I'm just curious because a lot of us, we use serving as kind of just something we do. But with the experiences that you had and the illnesses that they diagnosed you with, serving and being around other people, I assume, was quite challenging. So how did that make you feel? And once you started doing it, what was the, I guess, the end game on that?
Yeah, great question. It was it was definitely really hard, especially in the beginning. When I first started, it was one, I was coming back to God, coming back to church, and etc. And then I was doing that in a different culture. The church that I was going to, for reference, it, a lot of church in other countries is inspired by America, but we have different places that just do different things. So I guess I would compare it mostly to like a Bethel, Hillsong type of environment, which was hard, especially in the music department for me. But as far as just using serving, I was really doing it because, again, I wanted to, one, I did honestly have a lot of guilt. I had a lot of guilt and condemnation for the things that I had done in the period where I wasn't following God or I wasn't in alignment with his will and etc. And then two, I genuinely wanted to run after God. I genuinely really, and so in a way that translated to throwing myself into a crazy environment, spending 80-hour weeks. Like I lived in that church building, filling in wherever I could, just doing all of these different things in all of these different departments, from music to media to, just every department you can think of. They even had a marketing department. That was fun. And it was such a busy environment that you always had something to do. You always had somebody to minister to. So it really helped me kind of wake that part up in myself, those gifts, as far as praying over people, as far as starting to hear in the spirit, which is a very tricky thing. And, just starting to really understand more about the supernatural. So as far as being able to use it to inspire myself and to kind of develop certain gifts that God had already placed in me, I think it just comes back to how important discipline actually is. We know that Jesus was very disciplined. We know that he spent so much time, even as a child, in the temple, studying, learning. He wasn't even ministering up until a certain point. And I think in some ways, spending that time reading, studying, and serving, it just helped develop, because that's what discipline does. That's, if you go to the gym and you discipline yourself consistently, you're gonna bear fruit, you're gonna become stronger, you're gonna become more agile, and etc. So if you go to church and you practice in those disciplines, and you're using those disciplines as far as serving or etc., then you're going to see fruit, especially if you do it consistently, because that's what discipline does. That's what consistency does, even in a church environment. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question. Oh.
Yes, it did. Looks like we have another question out there.
This is Pastor, Sister Sarah. I noticed something interesting between you and your sister. You both are very good speakers and very eloquent in how you express yourself. I want to encourage you to tell your story. Tell your story. You tell it well. You really do. I appreciate you, and I want you to know from me, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. You've come out. I don't know how, I don't know whether you know how lovable and adorable you are. You really are. And so I just want to encourage you to keep on going. You got a lot ahead of you, a lot of giftedness and a lot of direction, your own and what God gives you. So I just want to know I got your back. Amen. I've got your back. You keep doing it. 'Cause you are doing it. You are a worshiper. You are a worshiper different than some, because yours comes out of a test. Yours comes out of a trial. Yours comes out of pressure. You're a diamond now because of the pressure that you've been through. Some people just worship because they got the talent. Well, you got the talent and the story. So that's an amazing thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I knew as soon as you got the mic, you were going to make me cry. But thank you. And
Nope, you were good. Just bask in that beautifulness. I just want to thank both of you ladies for taking the time to share your stories and speak to us. We are all striving to be better, to do better, to have a greater and better mindset. There's a quote that says, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Sister LaTonja could have taken her circumstances growing up and been a completely different person, but she chose to have a different mindset and to figure out how she wanted to live her life in spite of things that she saw in her growing up. So thank you, Sister LaTonja. And remember, she put the offer out to help folks with their budgets. And Sister Sarah, I don't even need to say anything. Pastor has said it all. I'll just echo, continue on. You have a lot of time ahead of you. 24 is young. And so just keep putting one foot in front of the other, Absolutely. Absolutely. We hope that you all were blessed today on Zoom from this Bible study. As I mentioned, we want to be better people, right? For Christ, for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, so that we can come together and serve. But we know that that's not without barriers, right? That's not without struggles. Sometimes people think, oh, you're a Christian or you get saved and nothing happens to you. And that's not real. That's not reality. So it was important to the program team to really bring real life stories to you all so that you all know you're not alone. I know there's others listening that struggle with depression and anxiety. I know there's others out there that would like to do better in their finances. So we hope you all enjoyed this tonight. So thank you so much, ladies. Thank you.